Welcome to the GeoInsight, your go-to channel for understanding the deeper geopolitics behind the headlines. Today, we're diving into one of the most audacious infrastructural and symbolic moves in recent U.S. presidential history, the ballistic build of a massive new ballroom at the White House, and what it says about power, politics, and symbolism in Washington and beyond. Make sure you stick around for the full breakdown. Large renovations at the White House aren't new, but rarely has one project stirred both fascination and alarm in equal measure. We're talking about the multi-$100 million, roughly 90,000 square foot ballroom expansion at the White House's East Wing, initiated under Donald J. Trump. Construction crews have already begun tearing into part of the East Wing's facade, windows smashed, entranceways ripped out, signaling the beginning of a major transformation. On the surface, an upgraded event space built to host hundreds of guests, perhaps for state visits, galas, high-level diplomacy. Under the surface, questions about heritage, priorities, influence, and the very image of American power. That's what we unpack today. Let's begin with the concrete. What exactly is being built, and how? The ballroom will be around 90,000 sqft in size, and will accommodate upwards of 650 to even 900 guests in a single event. Estimated cost: early on around $200 million. More recent estimates up to $250 million. Funding: according to official statements, the project will be privately funded by the president and many generous patriots, great American companies, and not draw on taxpayer funds. Site: the expansion is focused on the East Wing of the White House, which was originally built in its current form in 1942, and houses key offices such as the First Lady's offices, calligraphy, visitor entrance, and more. This is no minor refresh. It's arguably the most significant structural change to the White House complex since the major rebuildings after World War II. In other words, a legacy project. Construction images show heavy machinery tearing into the facade, windows, and entranceways. And interestingly, the body tasked with approving major construction in the Washington, D.C. area has said it does not have jurisdiction over demolition or site prep work, meaning demolition has begun even while full review may be pending. In short, big, bold, fast-moving, and raising eyebrows. This project isn't simply about more space. In geopolitics, buildings and landscapes are powerful signals. What messages are being sent here? Prestige and spectacle. The White House is the symbol of American leadership. A grand ballroom built there sends a message of grandeur, capability, and invitation to world elites. Domestic messaging. From a political standpoint, it places the president as a builder, a remodeler, someone leaving a tangible imprint on the seat of power. Private funding claim. The claim that no taxpayer dollars are used is meant to inoculate against criticism. But the very involvement of private companies and high-net-worth donors raises questions about access, influence, and accountability. Heritage versus change. The East Wing is historic. Altering it so dramatically triggers debates about preserving the past versus embracing the future. Some observers see it as a kind of cultural or architectural audacity. Timing. This is taking place while the U.S. still faces questions about the economy, global standing, and domestic divisions. A lavish build at such a time raises sharp questions about priorities. For example, one former member of Congress called the move an utter desecration of the White House facade. For global viewers, it may appear as a symbol of America doubling down not merely on power, but on image power. That matters in diplomacy. Buildings tell stories. Will U.S. partners take the space seriously? Will critics mock it as vanity? That tension is real. Let's drill into the institutional and oversight aspects, because projects at this scale don't exist in a vacuum. Regulatory oversight. The Planning Commission responsible for capital construction has stated that it lacks jurisdiction over demolition or site prep work, meaning demolition began before full review. Critics say this undermines transparency, donor funding, and influence. If companies like major tech or defense firms donate millions, questions emerge. What do they expect in return? Is access, influence, or favoritism being exchanged implicitly? The official line: no taxpayer cost. But many transparency advocates argue that private funding of public residences raises unique concerns. Heritage protections. The White House is a national historic landmark, which often triggers stricter rules around renovation and construction. Some analysts say preservation laws can be sidestepped on this site, increasing risks to historic integrity. Secrecy. The fact that the Treasury Department reportedly instructed employees not to share photos of the construction underscores concerns about transparency. Cost benefit and timing. A headline billed during times of economic stress or public concern risks backlash. The optics may matter more than the function. In sum, this is not simply a matter of bricks and mortar. It touches on institutional norms, democratic oversight, and the role of private money in public spaces. Okay, so why should someone outside the US or someone watching global geopolitics care about a ballroom? Because this build sends ripples into the international realm, diplomacy, and soft power. The White House is a key venue for state visits, diplomatic meals, and cultural signaling. A larger, more upscale event space could shift how the US hosts foreign leaders and shapes the backdrop of diplomacy. A more lavish stage can be perceived as projecting global leadership or as projecting excess, messaging to allies and rivals. In the contest of global influence between the US, China, Russia, and others, image and architecture matter. If the US presents a gleaming new venue, it implies confidence, permanence, and dominance. Conversely, if viewed as extravagance, it might feed narratives about misaligned priorities. Domestic strength as international signal. Infrastructure and development often serve as indicators of national vitality. By publicly undertaking a high-profile renovation, the US signals that it is in a building mood, confident in its leadership role. For allies, this can reassure. For adversaries, it may appear as posturing, internal cohesion, and external perception. Large symbolic projects can rally domestic support or stir domestic opposition. How the US manages this could affect its global soft power. If the build becomes controversial or widely criticized, that impacts perception abroad, undermining the authority it seeks to broadcast. Legacy and future administrations. This is not just about now, it's about legacy. Presidents leave physical imprints, and these in turn shape how future governments are viewed. The global community watches how the US evolves its leadership spaces. So, while a ballroom may sound superficial, in geopolitics it has meaning, and meaning matters. Of course, there are risks and criticisms. Let's run through them. Perception of extravagance. A multi-hundred-million-dollar ballroom on the White House campus can be seen as tone-deaf when many Americans face economic uncertainty. Heritage loss. Altering historical structures always raises concerns about long-term preservation, authenticity, and respect for national legacy. Oversight and transparency. The pace of demolition, limited early oversight, and donor involvement all raise governance questions. Opportunity cost. Could resources, even if privately funded, have gone to other priorities? The question of whether symbolism is worth the cost is one many will ask. Global backlash. Allies or partners may wonder if US priorities are shifting inward or towards spectacle, and adversaries may use the project to critique US democracy as elite-driven or disconnected from average citizens. Slippery slope. If precedent is set for major unvetted renovations of national symbols, future administrations may follow suit, potentially undermining norms of heritage protection and institutional checks. In one scathing commentary, a pundit compared the demolition of the East Wing facade to the burning of the White House by British troops in 1814. That's extreme, but it points to how emotionally and symbolically loaded this project is. Here are key developments to keep an eye on. 1. Donor disclosures. Which companies or individuals are contributing? Are there strings attached? 2. Construction milestones. Will the ballroom be completed as promised before January 2029? Will capacity and cost projections hold? 3. Oversight hearings. Will Congress or other oversight bodies question the process, heritage compliance, and cost benefit? 4. Public and international reaction. How do US citizens feel about the project over time? How do foreign leaders respond to the new venue when they visit? 5. Legacy effects. Will future administrations use the space? Will it become the official White House ballroom or get repurposed? 6. Symbolic use. Watch for major diplomatic events staged there, the first big state dinner or international summit. That will mark the shift from construction to operation. Each of these signals will tell us not just about this project, but about how the US views its role, legacy, and architecture as part of its global posture. To wrap up, the White House Ballroom project is more than a construction job. It's an intersection of architecture, politics, symbolism, power, and global messaging. On one level it says, we're still here, we're still building, we're inviting the world. On another level it asks, what do we value, what do we prioritize, and who pays for it? For global watchers, this is a case study in how even internal domestic developments' renovation of a building ripple outward into geopolitics. How the US navigates this will tell us something about its future direction. If you found this breakdown useful, we invite you to join our community. Hit the like button if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe to the GeoInsight for more deep dives into geopolitics, global power plays, and the stories behind the headlines. And if you're watching future episodes, ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.